Marathon, the world's fastest half marathon.
Hello and welcome to the RAK Half Marathon 2014. This international race is now in its 8th year. We have with us race commentator Tim Hutchings for some of your pearls of wisdom. Now Tim, good morning. What do you make of the elite field this year?
Morning, Greg. It's a very strong elite field, as ever in RAK, the fastest half marathon in the world. There's 10 elite men, 10 elite women. All of them have come across from East Africa in the last couple of days. And just to pick out a couple, I mean, in the men's race, Bernard Koech, very, very strong, the fastest in the field with 58.41. He's very consistent. He's won his last 4 half marathons. They've all been under 60 minutes, under the hour, which is the benchmark of world-class running. And Bernard Kipyego, who has run 2:07 twice last year for a full marathon. He's very, very strong as well. He's run 59.10. He'll be tough to beat.
Well, there is the full lineup. Ibrahim Ceylan there at the bottom, a very interesting entrant, making his debut, a serious debut at the half marathon, the former world champion at 10,000 metres. But the other big names at the top there, all established marathon runners, and they will be the men to beat.
And in the women's race, it's a case of not the two Bernards, but the two Jeptus. There's Priska Jeptu. They're not related, by the way. Priska Jeptu from Kenya, who is the London champion and the New York champion in the marathon. She was second here last year, ran very fast, so she knows the course. And Rita Jeptu, who was third last year, was the Boston and Chicago marathon champion last year. So again, very, very strong. And Mare Dibaba, we mustn't overlook, the Ethiopian, who's the fastest in the world this year at the full marathon. So both fields are loaded with talent.
Loaded with talent indeed. In fact, that women's field is probably stronger than the men's field, relatively speaking. Guteni Shone, Fides Dese there at the bottom, both capable of winning this one. They've all run a long way under 70 minutes, that benchmark of world class for ladies in the half marathon.
Yesterday there was an elite runners press conference. What did they have to say?
Well, the athletes tend to be pretty philosophical, but reserved at the press conference. They're nervous in the days beforehand. They're not naturally comfortable in front of the media, a lot of these athletes, but they're very positive. They know they're coming here after months of hibernation and hard training in East Africa, be it in Kenya or Ethiopia or indeed Eritrea in one case. So this is a critical day for them. You know, this next couple of hours, absolutely vital for each of them, that they realise all the hard work that they've put in.
My shape is good as last year, and I will try to run a good year.
My preparation of this half marathon, I think all things are going on well. I've been training very well. So I came here to just see how my speed is.
As I hope I win, I'm sure.
One athlete present who was not racing was Wilson Kipsang of Kenya, the world record holder in the marathon from Berlin last year. He received his Ames Award for Marathon Runner of the Year.
This race really gave me a good motivation because I did my personal best in half marathon in this race, 58.59. My tips to the men and women is just that they should try to run as fast as they can. They are in good shape and they have been training very well. If the weather is good and if all goes well, they have the ability to do it.
The weather conditions are very important. What will assist and help the runners this morning?
They don't want wind because this is a loop course, so if it was windy, at some points they'd be running into the wind. It's dead flat, so it's very, very good. But in terms of weather, the temperature is perfect. It's actually quite chilly now, about 15 minutes before the starting gun, which is just about perfect for the athletes. So touch wood, conditions right now are absolutely perfect. It's cool, there's very little wind. We know the temperatures will go up, but this will suit them.
Well, the athletes limbering up for some 15 or 20 minutes prior to the gun.
Well, the elite field are almost ready to start the race. Join us for the RAK Half Marathon 2014 after the break.
The RAK Half Marathon, the world's fastest half marathon. The RAK Half Marathon, the world's fastest half marathon.
Welcome back. We're about to start the RAK Half Marathon 2014. Let's join Tim Hutchings now at the start line.
Well, the athletes all very nervous then before they get underway. This is the pinnacle of months of hard training for each of these East African athletes. And of course, they're all nervous, and those nerves are important. It's important that you get hold of that adrenaline and channel it towards your performance. So athletes that get worried shouldn't be. It's a good thing. They head up the Muntasir Road, turn right along the Mangrove Road, they call it, right at the Officers Club, past the Sheikh Zayed Mosque, and then left there onto Nada Street, around 6 or 7 kilometres. They turn left at the Al Shuhada roundabout, and then right again past the Ruler's Palace, along the Kuzam Road, down past RAK Hospital, where they make that U-turn, and then back up, retracing their steps. Slight rise there, back onto the Mangrove Road, before that left and the long home straight into the finish line.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Well, the Ruler getting them underway in the best conditions there have been in the 8 years of the RAK Half Marathon, this being the 8th edition, and the crowd positively buzzing as they set off on their half marathon. Over 2,300 runners charge off down the Muntasir Road, with the elite, of course, up at the front end, moving much, much faster. It'll take them several minutes to cross that start line, but the elite women will quickly separate from the elite men, who are inevitably going a lot faster. But in years gone by, this has been quite a difficult stretch, with the wind coming from their left, from the mountains over on the horizon. But this year, very, very little breeze at all. The early pace, however, after only a few hundred metres, would appear to be conservative. They're not really shifting here. In years gone by, they've had pacemakers, or indeed a front runner who's been happy to really push it along hard. Well, for many of the joggers, the leisure runners, it's all about just getting round, getting from A to B, many of them running for charity, of course. But for the elite, this is an important step towards the spring marathon for the majority of them. The elite ladies all watching each other rather conservatively, rather like the men too. They have gone out slowly as well. This is slow. That's training pace for some of these ladies. I have to say, it's almost a little disappointing that they're not really attacking this first kilometre, because this is where you can lose a lot of time. The men now taking the right off Muntasir Road. They turn right here, will run along past the mangrove swamp, commonly known as the Mangrove Road. This stretch absolutely dead flat, and interestingly too, in Ras Al Khaimah, the road surface really high quality. The New York Marathon, one of the world's most famous marathons, the world's biggest marathon in numbers, is famed for its relatively poor road surface. Athletes have to really watch their footing for a lot of sections, but here in RAK, the conditions underfoot absolutely brilliant. Well, number 7 there, Wilson Kiprop, the early leader, along with Bernard Koech, two of the fastest on paper. 54 in the ladies' race, the diminutive figure of Mari Dibaba, who ran that marathon in China just 6 weeks ago. Will she have recovered? And there's an indication of how slowly they're going, because there's a lot of the local runners, good standard runners, but nonetheless local runners, who are within touching distance of the elite women. They really have gone out very slowly for this first kilometre. Well, the men go through the 1 kilometre arch. There are those arches at every single kilometre, and their time is slow. It's outside 3 minutes. It's way outside what was expected, I have to say. I wonder if that'll cause an injection of pace when they realise that they really have gone off way, way below the expected tempo, the planned tempo, because they don't come here just to win, these athletes. They come here wanting to record a fast time. It's an important physiological process in their build-up to their spring marathon. The ladies too go through not far behind, but they're not exactly flying either. No discernible acceleration, however. They certainly will be able to make up some of those lost seconds later in the race with an acceleration, but you can never make it all up. So lost time now, some of it will remain lost. Lelisa Dasisa then, about to take the right-hand turn near the Ras Al Khaimah Officers Club, and he has taken the bull by the horns and is pushing on a little bit with the race only a few minutes old. Well, Mari Dibaba wearing 54 is only 24 years old. Many people in the sport surprised that she is running here just 6 weeks after that very fast marathon in China in Xiamen back on January the 2nd. Will she have recovered? That is the big question mark. They're so tightly packed, they're almost falling over each other there. In fact, Priska Jeptu there, 52, the world #1 in the marathon last year after her wins in London and New York, the two really big marathons on the global circuit. She's having to gesture to the other athletes to get out of that pack, almost like a track race. Well, they still haven't started moving very fast. Priska Jeptu then, we can take a quick look at her, 29-year-old wearing big number 52. 66.11 last year for second place, fabulously quick time. She'll want to go better than that today. But frankly, the way they're moving at the moment, and the ladies now take the right after the mile stretch or so along this mangrove road by the Officers Club, the ladies are not going quick either. Number 7, Wilson Kiprop. Had to drop out of the Olympic Games 10,000 metres with an injury, did Kiprop, so has experienced his fair share of highs and lows as the group begins to whittle down now. And one just gets the feeling that they've turned the screw a little bit. And the little man that's doing it, perhaps the shortest of this pack of elite men, Bernard Koech, the 26-year-old, in wonderful form. Although he did drop out of the World Championships last year in Moscow, where it was sweltering hot. And that stands in contrast to conditions now at about 7:10 in the morning. Conditions are absolutely glorious.
This race is not all about elite runners. Thousands are running here for a variety of reasons. We caught up with some of them earlier. It is Valentine's Day today. Are you running together? Or?
We are.
Yes.
So why are you? What made you decide to get up so early on a weekend Friday morning to do this?
She made me do it.
Happy Valentine's. Run with love and safe landing at the finishing line. See you.
Well, Priska Jeptu now beginning to control things for the ladies group, although you could virtually throw a blanket over that little pack, and it's too tightly bunched for my liking, and it's an indication that they haven't really yet started moving up to optimum pace, to where they're really doing themselves justice. All of them watching each other, all of them deciding that they'll hold back at this stage. 53, Rita Jeptu to the left of picture, another very quick runner as they pass a good section of the crowd, so you can hear the cheering. Well, further back down the road, the massed runners got plenty of space on these lovely wide sweeping roads of Ras Al Khaimah. And many of them with headphones in, listening to music, just enjoying the Sunday or Friday morning jog. It would be Sunday morning up in Europe, Friday morning in Ras Al Khaimah. Now, there have been changes in the men's race. Gaps appearing, or at least the group beginning to stretch out a little bit, as that same pair who were leading earlier on, Bernard Koech 2 and Wilson Kiprop, the World Half Marathon champion back in 2010, who was 7, push on. There is Kiprop's bio, or some of it at least, 59.15 last year, his quickest time. And the 26-year-old has real track credentials too, 27.01 for 10,000, which is fabulously fast.
It's time for the team relay to begin. Teams of 4 complete around 5 kilometers each, with the last runner then completing the 6-kilometer stretch to the finish line. We caught up with some of them earlier.
We're from RAK Hospital, and the RAK, we're so proud of it. And like, there's, you know, it's like this is the first time I've been running, so we're kind of psyched about this one.
So why did you want to run together as a team? I mean, isn't it? It's quite a long way, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is basically for a team building and for fun as well.
Well, it is for fun. The 100+ teams for the RAK Free Trade Zone Relay Challenge get underway then, with the ruler setting them off just 10 minutes after the massed runners of the full half marathon. Each of these athletes will run 5 kilometers, that's about 3 miles, with 4 in each team, and the 4th athlete runs 6 kilometers to make up the 21 of the half marathon. Away they go, and the atmosphere a little bit more relaxed amongst that pack than it was for the half marathon runners, who of course have got that long route ahead of them. So there's the course again, the mangrove swamp to the right as the elite athletes, the elite men are approaching the 5-kilometre point. And it is the little figure of Bernard Koech doing the aggressive running yet again, and there's more urgency to his stride, to the bounce in the stride of so many of these men. Wilson Kiprop, the World Half Marathon champion back in 2010 alongside him, matching him stride for stride. But as they come now through the 5-kilometre marker, well, the split is disappointing. They've gone out conservative, we know that, and that time is slow. They'll have to make it up. Well, the elite men going through 5 kilometres in 14:31, disappointingly slow. It'll be tough to make up the time lost. We were hoping it would be near 14 minutes, but maybe they've got the message now. Certainly they're motoring. The ladies will go through 5K. We'll see that right after this. Well, it's all too clear, isn't it, that it's Priska Jeptu, the world's strongest marathon runner last year, and the fastest in this field on paper, who's controlling things and just beginning to gradually crank it up a little bit in the ladies' race. They started very slowly, but you can tell there, if you pick a spot on the road and see how quickly it disappears out of shot, you can tell they're not hanging about now. The race is on in earnest for the ladies, and Priska Jeptu almost dictating things like a conductor with that little pack behind her. If there was anybody up alongside her, you'd know that they were comfortable at this tempo. So already, I think, she's beginning to ask questions. Now, she's gesturing with her hand there. I don't know if she's been clipped, having her heels clipped from behind. I think that might be the problem. The ladies then going through 5 kilometres, and they outside 17 minutes. Goodness me. It's pedestrian pace for ladies of this calibre. What a shame on a perfect morning in Ras Al Khaimah. Good crowds though, cheering them through that point. Well, confirmation of the time, 17 minutes 14 with another 9 athletes within a second or so of Priska Jeptu. But again, they've lost a lot of time. In their case, the ladies, up to about a minute perhaps. So many of these athletes want to come here and run fast and produce a time that reflects their true fitness. But as the men go through 6 kilometres, they have upped the tempo a little bit. Certainly that one a long way under 3 minutes. And it's Bernard Koech they've got to thank, because he is the man in control. Number 10 there to the left of picture, Jacob Kendegor, is another sub-60-minute man. He won the Berlin Half Marathon in April last year. That's a massive race up in the German capital. He has run 2:09 for the marathon. That was in Mombasa, actually, down on the Kenyan coast, where it's always hot and sticky. Well, 55 now. That's Flamina Chayech to the left of picture. And there is Flamina's card. Won the Ostia Half Marathon down near Rome in 67:39 last year, and the Vienna Marathon champion last year as well. So Chayech, the first athlete to move up alongside Priska Jeptu and match her stride for stride. 61, Guteni shown in the pink, watching their every move. But it would appear that Priska Jeptu is really the only athlete prepared to get out in front and do the hard work. Well, Bernard Koech and Wilson Kiprop have never been anywhere but at the front of this race so far. Wilson Kiprop, number 7 there, has won 5 of the 7 half marathons he's ever run. That's a fabulously high success rate. 13 there, tucked in between them, Amlosum. And there's the card for Bernard Koech, who unusually ran 3 marathons last year. Most of them do 2, and the 2 of them were fast in Dubai and in Amsterdam at the beginning and end of the year, but he did drop out of the World Championships. Very soon, the pressure will start telling on more of these men, and he's got to keep telling himself that as Bernard Koech. Make it hurt, make every kilometre count.
The RAK Half Marathon, the world's fastest half marathon. The RAK Half Marathon, the world's fastest half marathon.
And the ladies now beginning to move at a more consistent pace. They've certainly upped the tempo. Guteni's shown there, the tall figure in the centre of the picture in pink from Ethiopia, is only 22, still learning her trade to some degree. Rita Jeptu, nearest the camera there in the red top, 32 years old, just as experienced as Priska Jeptu, frankly, but it's Priska who leads and is now really shifting. And I think one or two of them are going to start struggling at this tempo because they have, thanks to Priska, had to accelerate quite dramatically over the last 1 or 2 kilometers. Yes, indeed. Athletes beginning to struggle at the back of this group. Good athletes too. And this is going to be a very, very interesting split, this second 5K for the ladies. Remember, 17:14 for the first 5 kilometers. That was painfully slow for athletes of this caliber. But this 5 kilometers leading through towards 10K, 10 kilometers, that's about 6 miles, will be much, much faster. They're taking the long left-hand turn near the roundabout there. And Priska Jeptu, the tallest in this field, but only just from Guteni Shone of Ethiopia, has decided that she doesn't need a pacemaker. She's not going to sit in behind anybody else. She's decided she will do what she knows is best. She prepared for the London Marathon, which she's got coming up last year, with a run here in RAK, and she ran very fast, was just beaten by 2 seconds, but finished in second place with that new personal best, and she's replicating that same racing regime to build up for London. She knows it works well, but what she knows is she's got to run fast. So she's looking for a much better split as 10 kilometers approaches. Still 11 kilometers to go. But the men, a few hundred meters up the road from the ladies, obviously. 28.5 minutes on the clock, nearly. Here they come then, towards 10 kilometers, unofficially going through there, the men, at about 28:30. And that's more like it. That last 5 kilometers, 14 minutes and 1 second. Remember, after the first 5K, 14:31. So that is a big, big difference. It may not seem a lot, 30 seconds, but over just 3 miles, it's a big acceleration. And it's all down to this little man, Bernard Koech. You so hope he gets his reward because he's doing all the hard work at the moment. Yeah, there's a real sense of urgency in this pack. The work rate has gone up very, very noticeably, but doesn't he bounce along nicely? Little Bernard Koech there. Despite the 3 marathons in his legs from last year, he's confident and moving as well as anybody in this pack. Still 10 strong. Well, at 10 kilometers, 28 minutes 30 confirmed for Bernard Koech, with Kiprop Amlosom on exactly the same time. Ibrahim Jaylan just beginning to struggle perhaps a bit. Well, Priska Jeptu has a little look over her shoulder there. I don't know if she was getting clipped from behind by Guteni Shone, but are those gaps appearing? And there, another gesture. Look at this. That's the hand saying, come on, move up alongside me, help with this, share the work. And Guteni Shone there in pink is saying, no thanks, you want to take it on, you do the work. And that's her right. But of course, it's always good to see cooperation from the athletes in the middle of the race. I think the gloves come off towards the latter end, but in the middle of the race, it's good to see athletes sharing the work rate, sharing the pacemaking duties in effect. Almost single file, look, in the men's race. And Jaylan right at the back in the red, beginning to drop away at 11 kilometers. And they are moving so much quicker now. Now they're moving under 2:50 per kilometer, 2 minutes 50. And number 10 is out the back door, and Jacob Kendegor in the green in the background really beginning to struggle, and he's a sub 60-minute runner, and that in itself a good indication of how difficult this pace is to hang on to now. Jaylan in the red at the back, look, he's in trouble. And these athletes, we mustn't forget, are supremely conditioned. They're like Formula One racing cars, they really are. Well, the ladies approaching 10K now, and Priska Jeptu has got the gap. She's done so much work over the first half of the race. They're nearly at halfway. and she's got her just desserts. She asked Guteni Shone to share the tempo, to help do the work, and that request was rejected. Well, she had probably got angry from that, because now she has a gap, and she's really torn this field apart with this intense speed at the mid-race point. Now, and the adrenaline will flow a bit better now, because when you get the gap, you know you've got the race won if you can just maintain a good steady tempo and keep your focus. That's important, that gap. It's only a few seconds, but it's absolutely critical. The time at 10k for the ladies, Priska Jeptu 32.41, and look, only 3 other athletes within 5 seconds of the Kenyan. Well, we're down to single file once again as they negotiate a left-hand turn down towards the RAK Hospital, and it is still Bernard Koech who leads, and he's already done some damage. 1 or 2 athletes have dropped away, as we know. Kandagor has gone in the green in the background. We're down to 8, in fact. And it is a game of patience. You just have to keep working hard, knowing that you're hurting people. It really is a test of your confidence, your mental strength when you're at the front and you've got people hanging on to you. You've just got to know and keep telling yourself you are hurting them. So Bernard Koech and Wilson Kiprop, as they've been throughout this first half of the race, still at the front doing the work. Good support for the athletes here, and the race is of course held under the patronage of His Highness Sheikh Saud bin Sakr Al Kazimi, ruler of Ras Al Khaimah, and Greg caught up with him.
It's really important for us to encourage our young men and women and everybody to have sport. And marathon as such is a place where you actually, it's an event that people can, from all different, really can participate.
Well, one athlete who's certainly participating well is Priska Jeptu, deep in concentration. They're trying desperately to stay in touch with her, keep her within a reasonable reach, the athletes behind, but with each stride, and she has a little glance over her shoulder there and another to check what damage she's done. With each stride, she's easing away from her pursuers. And 56, Hela Kiprop, 6th in RAK last year. She's hurting. 55, Flamina Chayech, the very strong marathon runner. She won in Vienna and Toronto last year. And that's the caliber of athletes that Priska Jeptu is destroying here. It really does underline the power of this lady. She looks long and thin, and she's shy and when you try and interview her, and very reluctant to give much away. But she's an absolute lioness on the roads when it comes to her racing ability. And that gap now is really widening quickly. Well, we have a new leader in the men's race too. They've cut loose. Number 12, Paul Lonyangata, has had enough. Maybe he felt the pace was faltering a little bit just past halfway. But Lonyangata, for the first time, hits the front. He's only 21 years old. He's a good track runner, has good track pedigree. And Bernard Koech, for the moment, having to work hard to get back to the front, which he does. Lonyangata in the red, just testing the field there with that surge, perhaps, as they negotiate that U-turn down by RAK Hospital. Now head back up towards the Ruler's Palace and the Mangrove Road. Well, the massed runners towards the back of the field, jogging along only 2 or 3 miles into their race, frankly. Many, many kilometres behind the elites who are working so hard now in both races. The true racing is really on. The elite men, of course, now approaching the 15-kilometre marker down towards RAK Hospital. And it is still Bernard Koech out in front. 1 or 2 others, like Lonyangata and Kendagor, have gone to the front, and they go through 15k, just around 42.5 minutes. And certainly it'll be interesting to see the pace, the tempo of this middle 10 kilometres. Remember, that first 5k was very slow, but they have been working hard now for a half an hour or so. And there's a real respectability to these splits now. The 15-kilometre marker reached, by my estimate, in just outside 42.5 minutes. And they're gathering themselves now. They've got about 6 kilometres to run. If it was a track race, they'd be in the home straight, so to speak. So psychologically, they're beginning to prepare themselves for the attack and the hard last 2 or 3 miles. Bernard Koech going through 15k in 42.38, with that group of 7 other athletes down to Loni Angata right behind him. Kendagor and Jaylan have dropped away. Well, look at the gap, the yawning gap behind Priska Jeptu. She has really pulled them apart, destroyed this field and got the gap, and that's a winning gap. With an athlete of her caliber, with her experience, she won't make an error big enough to drop back and lose ground and be caught now. The case really is, what time can she do? It's her against the clock. Priska Jeptu, wonderful racer, and what an individual she is. She's a mother, she runs several businesses back in Kenya with the money she's earned, but really focused on this race today, as are these men. And it's still Bernard Koech. He's run a 2:04 marathon. That was in Dubai last year, some 13 months ago, when he was 5th in the 2013 edition, 2:04.53. He's got enormous strength, as has Priska Jeptu. Well, they call this the loneliness of the long distance runner, but she's worked for it, and she'll be glad to glance over her shoulder there and see empty road behind her, because frankly, they're just about all out of sight. 55 here, Flomina Chayech in 2nd place, moving well, but you can just tell there's not the same fluency, that she's not really attacking the road surface like Priska Jeptu is. Well, 13 to the 4 again, Nguse Amlosom. He's looked hungry for it, actually, on several occasions there, number 13 in the blue, Amlosom. He's moved up to the front or to the shoulder of the leader on several occasions, which suggests to me he's running with him himself. It'd be very interesting to see Priska Jeptu running up alongside the men now. I don't think she's moving that much more slowly. But she's approaching 15 kilometers as well. Remember, 17:14 her first 5k, her second 5k 15:27, much quicker, and she goes through 15k there in around just outside 48 minutes, and that's another very quick split for that third 5 kilometer segment. It'll be similar to the second 5k segment, so in both men's and women's races a really similar pattern, with a slow opening few kilometers, then a big acceleration, and this next 10 kilometers up to 15k so much quicker. The difference is that Priska Jeptu has blown the field apart, whereas in the men's race it's still very competitive with that pack of 8 men. And that tells the story, doesn't it? My word, Priska Jeptu 48.08, over half a minute in the lead with 6 kilometers to run. Chayech and Kiprop battling out the minor places was shown, and then a gap back to Rita Jeptu in the background. 6k to go.
The RAK Half Marathon, the world's fastest half marathon. The RAK Half Marathon, the world's fastest half marathon.
Welcome back. We're getting towards the business end now of this half marathon in Ras Al Khaimah, the 8th edition of this race. And it's still the little Kenyan Bernard Koech leading, as the men have gone through 15 kilometers. They've got about 5 kilometers or 3 miles to go. And again, he's reducing them with this surge to single file. 18 kilometers indeed they go through now. 3 kilometers to run. That's about 2 miles. I'm surprised at how many men are still there, because they've been running very hard for some 10 or 12 kilometers now. Number 5 beginning to struggle. Bernard Kipyego was a World Championship silver medalist 5 years ago. He's a strong man. And here's a strong woman. Priska Jeptu. Very different situation in the women's race past 15 kilometers. She's got a massive gap behind her. It's way over 30 seconds, and it's growing all the time. She's got all the qualities necessary for a great racer. Real strength as a marathon runner. Good racing brain too. She knows when to surge, when to go. And she's got the presence of mind at every opportunity to have a little glance over her shoulder and try and find out what's going on behind. But I think for some time now she hasn't been able to see what's going on behind her. 16 kilometers for her. Remember, she went through 15 kilometers in 48.08. Well, that third 5 kilometer segment was 15.27, the same as the second 5 kilometer segment. So metronomic running from Priska Jeptu. The men then turning off Kuzam Road, past the Ruler's Palace, in the background, the wall there. And now up onto the mangrove swamp road. And Wilson Kiprop, number 7, losing a little bit of ground on that leading 5 or 6. Bernard Koech was confident at the press conference yesterday, the day before this race, and he's running with enormous confidence and composure here. 13, though, has dogged his heels. Amlosum there, the Eritrean, the only Eritrean in the race. All these other elites, either Kenyan or Ethiopian. Number 12 is moving well, Paul Lonyangata. And Jay Land there, that's one of the big surprises. We expected something special from the former world champion on the track at 10,000 metres, but he dropped back well before halfway. Priska Jeptu then. And you will notice, you can't avoid it, the fact that she doesn't actually cover the ground in the prettiest of manners. Aesthetically and biomechanically, you could argue she's not a good-looking runner. But it doesn't matter, because if the full package results in the athlete covering the ground really well, that's the most important thing. 3 kilometres to go for Priska Jeptu. The 18-kilometre marker behind her now. And this is the final run-in. We can take a look at this as the men approach 20 kilometres along that mangrove swamp road, with the mangrove swamp to their left. And then that final turn onto Muntasir Road, and then about a kilometre, maybe just under a kilometre, that final finishing straight. But who's going to go first? Because one indication from the tightness of this group is that nobody has really yet put their foot down on the throttle and kicked hard for home. They're into the final mile and a half, the final 3 kilometres, but nobody has yet decided to cut loose. There's a little game of cat and mouse going on here, and Lelisa Desisa, for the first time, wearing big number 9, the Ethiopian, who is perhaps the fastest marathon runner in the race, has moved to the 4 for the first time. And very quickly, Lelisa Desisa and Amlosum come to the 20-kilometre mark, and they've got a gap, and they have accelerated. They've done the damage over the last 200 or 300 metres. They've ripped away from that group. And Bernard Koech in 3rd place, the little man in yellow and black there, who has done the work for most of the race. Even he can't go with this. Lelisa Desisa at 20 kilometres, 56.40 with Amlosum, and that 3 or 4 second gap. It's tough to make up at this stage. Well, the timing, of course, is critical at these events, and the technology, while it's been around for a while, improves all the time. Munir Yaras is the man in charge.
What exactly is this chip in the shoe?
In the 20, 30 years ago, the race was for 100, 200, 300 people. It was easy to make manually. Now each race have over 20, 30,000 participants. So it is not possible to make the classification manually. So when passing between 75 centimeters around this mat recognizes the chip. Chip have a special code, and this code in the database match with your name, and this is like your ID card. And when you are passing through the mat, it recognize you. So we know where and how many athletes is passing in the control point. To be sure that the athletes complete the exact course, you need to check all the points.
Priska Jeptu, glorious isolation for her. 55 coming through in 2nd place. Flamina Chayat, she too isolated. And then the battle for the 3rd spot on the rostrum is a tight one. 56, Hela Kiprop, 6th in RAK last year. Looks like she's going to go better this year. 61, Guteni Shone, winner of 2nd place in the Luanda Marathon back last September. 53 coming through. That's Rita Jeptu. Not having a great day, Rita Jeptu, I have to say. She was 3rd in RAK last year. That's the last left-hand turn then, onto the Muntasir Road. And Amlosum, can you believe? In control at the moment, the chasing pack working very hard to get back to these two. But Lelisa Desisa in 2nd place is being stretched here, is being tested by Amlosum. Amlosum, by the way, there, in the lead, has never broken 60 minutes for the half marathon. But he's going to today, because the pace over the last 3 quarters of this race, after the opening first 5k, which was so slow, has been quite remarkable. 14:01 for the 2nd 5k, 14:08 for the 3rd 5k, 14:02 for the fourth 5K, and now Lalisa de Sousa moves alongside him and grits his teeth, and look at them, both of them baring their teeth here and sprinting for the line, and the crowd roaring them on as they come towards the finish line. The 8th edition of the RAK Half Marathon, the fastest half marathon in the world, has been fabulous from the men's race, and it's Lalisa de Sousa who cuts loose. He will be the champion here. Lalisa de Sousa punches the air, and rightly so, in the sunlight, and breaks the tape just outside 59.5 minutes. Amlosum in second, the Eritrean, a massive personal best for him by over a minute. And then the rest of them come through the line. Wilson Kiprop third, Bernard Coetz fourth, Bernard Kipyego fifth. What a fabulous race this has been in Ras Al Khaimah 2014.
All right, well, I'm with Lalisa de Sousa, the winner of this year's RAK Half Marathon. Lalisa, congratulations first of all.
Thank you very much.
So how do you feel about winning this race?
So I am happy. I ran in 59:34, and I am happy for winning this half marathon.
What was going through your mind when you were running the race?
I want to win, and I want to run 59.
And what about the conditions today, the weather conditions? Were they good?
The weather condition is perfect, and the course is also perfect.
Well, there's something perfect too about the running of Priska Jeptu. The men have finished and they're track-suited and warming down. Priska Jeptu just coming up the last stretch of Kuzam Road before turning the right onto Mangrove Swamp Road, but she is in such isolation here she can hear her own feet hitting the road and her own breath for company. She is working hard though. There's a chasing pack. They're a long way back down the road though. This is 6th, 7th and 8th places here. The climax coming for the ladies.
The RAK Half Marathon, the world's fastest half marathon. The RAK Half Marathon, the world's fastest half marathon.
Well, the sunshine continues to burn down on the runners, the temperature climbing in the early morning of this Friday of the 8th edition of the RAK Half Marathon. But in the women's race, well, it couldn't be more different to the men's, as the leader, Priska Jeptu, way out in front, goes through the 20-kilometre mark, and her time there just outside 63.5 minutes. But it'll be a long time before anybody else passes through that arch, as Jeptu now heads towards the left-hand turn before the final straight all the way down Muntasir Road towards the Manamal, near the Manamal finish line. But Priska Jeptu, with those flailing arms, still nice and relaxed, I suppose you could say that, in the shoulders. That's the good thing. She's not tight, but she knows she's performing well here. It's her against the clock, and we're wondering just how fast she can go. Well, there are the times at 20 kilometres. Jeptu 63:43, over a minute the lead now she has over Flamina Chayech and Guteni Shone. Well, here she comes then. The mangrove swamp to her left now. That long raking stride has dragged her well over a minute clear of a very strong field. But look at Priska Jeptu here. Hardly anybody else in sight behind her on the Muntasir Road as she comes towards the line. It's going to be just outside 67 minutes, or is it? Very tight indeed for Priska Jeptu. The arms are aloft, and she is the champion after second place last year. She's come back and gone one place better. A nervous glance over the shoulder there of Flamina Chayech, but there's no need for it because she has got a bit of good daylight behind her. She's in second place. Priska Jeptu has done her job for the day, complete, with the big prize money going to her for the win. But this is nonetheless a very solid run for Flamina Chayech. It's going to be outside her personal best, but she too has beaten a good field here and will be pleased, I suspect, with the calibre of that run. Around 68.10 for Chayech.
Now I'm here with the female winner of the RAK Half Marathon, Priska Jeptu. Priska, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
How was it for you winning today's race?
Today I'm very happy because I managed to be the winner of this year, because last year I was second place, but today I'm very happy.
Now it's interesting that you have a big fan base, because with all the Kenyan athletes, you have a lot of cheering going on in the crowds. The crowds come out to see you, don't they?
Yes, the crowd also helping because they cheer us and give us a lot of morale. So it's also help us when we are running.
Well, many athletes still out on the roads, of course, the vast majority of them, in fact. Smiles galore as they begin to come towards the end of their race. Athletes of all abilities down the home straight. There's the finish line in front of them. Loads of support this year too around the finish line, which is so good to see. But the elite athletes getting their presentations as the rest are finishing. Beautiful shot there from the mini helicopter above the home straight on Muntasir Road. Lalisa de Cisa then receiving his award, his Justa rewards. That plaque, of course, beautifully designed, and some $15,000 for him in first place. Gumuse Amlosom in second place with that massive personal best. Kiprop and Koech behind them. $10,000 US for second place, by the way. And the ladies as well. Priska Jeptu taking her plaque deservedly. And even more so, really, when you look at the extent of that winning margin. Well over a minute clear of Chayech, and Guteni shown with Hela Kiprop in fourth. Well, athletes who have finished able to wind down and enjoy the rest of their Friday. The sun's still beaming down and the temperature's climbing.
We still have people finishing the race, but those who have completed it feeling a sense of real satisfaction.
I'm 1 year older, I'm 9 minutes faster, so I'm 40 next week, and I've closed it at 1:55, so I'm very, very, very proud of myself.
It's an achievement for us.
It's a great way to celebrate the Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
And I think it was amazing. It was great fun.
My personal best,
great.
I squashed it by 3.5 minutes.
We had a plan of 2 hours and we made it in 2 hours.
Wow.
And the people were just fantastic on the side.
It's always good to finish. Haven't done one for a while, didn't really do much training and walked it. So yeah, it's a good thing to do for Valentine's Day. Now I can go and have some chocolate.
So it is Valentine's Day today, and we have a Valentine's story here. We have a couple of runners. Tell us your story.
Okay, well, we met about 2 years ago after the RAK Half Marathon. In brief time, informed her we were going to get married.
It was about 45 minutes.
We decided exactly it's time to relive and Valentine's Day in 2 years, and here we are, 2 years later, married.
An extra reason to smile then, but behind every event there's a smooth organising machine, and the race director is Nathan Clayton at the Ras Al Khaimah Half Marathon.
Now I'm with the race director of the RAK Half Marathon, Nathan Clayton. Nathan, great race today, but what went right, what went wrong, do you think?
We got the good weather. We were hoping for wind-free. We had some strong winds 2 years ago that slowed the times down. This year we had very, very favourable conditions for the beginning. And with the weather stayed fine, the athletes were on good form, and we had 8 men dip under the hour, which is a first for any race. So pretty pleased with that. I think any event director is always going to be looking to better the event and make it bigger and better every year they can, and improve upon the services that we give the runners, the many thousands of runners that come not just from Ras Al Khaimah or the UAE now, but from many, many countries around the world. So I think we've managed to do that. We've managed to build upon the race year upon year. It's getting better, the numbers are increasing, and it's onwards from here.
The conclusion of the 8th annual Ras Al Khaimah Half Marathon. Tim Hutchings is back with me. Tim, what do you think went right? What do you think went wrong for the elite runners today?
Gosh, where do you start? I mean, it was one of those days where the racing was fantastic, the finishing times were very special, but one was left wondering what if. Because in both the men's and women's elite races, the early pace was very slow. Much slower than I expected in what were perfect conditions. I mean, these are the best conditions I've ever seen in 35 years following road racing. And the men went out very slowly, the women went out very slowly, which left themselves a mountain to climb. So the racing was very good in the men's race. We had 8 men under the hour, which is a world record. It's a world best. Never before has there been that strength in depth. But they could have run so much faster if they'd gone out more aggressively. The women, they had 9 women under 70 minutes, which is rare. But again, they could have run a minute or so quicker. So I'm pleased with the elite athletes. The times were great. RAK has maintained its reputation as an incredibly quick, high-quality half marathon. But they could have been quicker.
It's the world record not broken today, but what about next year, looking ahead to 2015?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the message will go out again, loud and clear, to the world of road racing, that this is the place to come and run a half marathon if you've got a big spring marathon. This is for the elite athletes, of course. Conditions now have been perfect 7 years out of 8 here. They've never been better. And I think a lot of people will say that's the place to go to get a time in the half marathon that reflects my abilities and all the hard training I've been doing. So more of them will come next year, and I think we'll try and set it up and make sure they go out and optimise their result.
Tim, many thanks. Well, that's it. That wraps it up for this edition of the RAK Half Marathon. We'll see you again next year here on the course in the 2015 edition. But for now, from all of us on the team, goodbye.
The RAK Half Marathon, the world's fastest half marathon.